Hello. In this video I will show you how to get started with the SMARTree client. When you install SMARTree Bear, you're going to see something like this. For the very first time using SMARTree, you are also going to see a pop-up window called the wizard, and this wizard looks something like this. So this wizard shows you that there's a couple of steps you need to do before you truly utilize the power of the SMARTree client. Step one is to install Git. So by clicking on this step one, it will open up a window and take you to the Git for Windows installation site. So here's the download link, and you can download that. I won't go through the process of downloading that. It's all very self-explanatory. You might ask yourself, what is Git? Well, Git is actually a very powerful source control environment for backing up and committing code and sharing code among users. So in this instance, we are using this platform to manage our SMARTrees, commit our SMARTrees, and push our SMARTrees to the cloud. So in order for you to utilize those features, it is important that you first install Git after installing the software. So clicking on that will download the software. If you scroll down here, you'll see some of the features for this. So it's a very powerful free platform. What you'll get with the Git is all the bells and whistles you will need to do Git version control. You may not be familiar with Git. You can also do some background reading online. It's a very popular platform to do this sort of operations. And you'll become familiar with some of the terminology. So Git bash basically it opens up essentially a little Windows shell, and it allows you to do command options for executing commands on your Git repositories. And these repositories are essentially a timestamp print of the files as you commit them. And this Git bash can be opened up, right-clicked on any folder on your computer, and you can open up Git bash on any folder. The Git GUI is basically a little standalone GUI for basically implementing the same commands that you'd have in Git bash, but in a GUI environment. So you don't have to remember the specific commands, but it will execute them here as well. And when you install Git, it is integrated into Windows. So right-clicking on these windows allows you to access both the bash and GUI environment. So what you want to do is install Git first, and then once that's done, you can move on to step two. So step two is you're going to initialize your first repository, and you can do it two ways. You can initialize your repository on a local directory, or you can also clone a repository from a local or remote site. So what I typically do is in order to leverage the SMARTrees that are out there, and we have those hosted in a number of places, is I typically clone it from a site. So in this instance, I'm going to click on here, and it opens up another window. And this is the Git clone window, and you'll see it here. It was just off screen. And you have a number of options here. So what you can do is you can clone from a folder. You can also clone from a site, and I'll get to that in a minute. Or you can clone from the repos that you may already have. So I already have some repos that I'm accessing on this client, but in your case, this would be empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab SMARTrees from a site that I already have up. And the nice thing about this is you can actually pull the latest and greatest templates, for instance, from a site and embed them in your computer, and then you can do with them as you please. And these are very powerful templates, and that you'll have a lot of use for when you're running the client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste a link here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to some of my GitLab sites, and I have one here, and here's a GitLab site at CCM. And what I'm going to do here is log in. And if you haven't logged in before, you're going to register. Pretty straightforward. I already have an account, so the sign-up process is very straightforward. One of the things that will also happen is you're probably going to see a two-factor authentication option when you sign in. That's pretty straightforward. It's done normally for a lot of universities and industries, is where you have a smartphone and you enter a 6-digit code to confirm that it is you that is logging in. And so once you register, you will be given a QR code for that to work. I've already gone through that process, so I'm just going to sign in as me. And you'll see here is my two-factor authentication. So I'm just going to enter my number and then go in here. So once you get in here, now you'll see these are all the different repositories that I have. And the one that I'm interested in is this one right here, the units and templates. So if you click on this, it shows you I've got a bunch of materials and models and templates and whatnot. And these are basically the backbone SMARTrees that one might use, either for just accessing material data or availing of these templates. And these templates have commits to them, and it tells you when they were updated. So you have a nice view here of the history of all of these folders and the contents of these folders, and you can dig deeper in here if you like. You can look under materials and you'll see a host of materials, and you can go back up to the main area. You can also download this over here on the right. You can click download, and you can download them as a zip file or tar file and save those on your local machine and access them. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to access the link to this site, and that's up here, SSH. So I'm going to access it through a secure shell, and you can actually click this button here, copy link to clipboard. So when you copy that, now it's in memory, and I can go back in here and I can right click and just hit paste data. So that is that link, and once I've done that, I can then decide where I want to put it. So I now have my link, and I now need to say, well, where would I like my these libraries to live? So you can just click on this button here and open up a folder. Here I have an empty folder, and I'm just going to say, okay, I'd like these libraries to live here. Hit select folder. So once you're done that, the clone button should now become live, and you can hit clone. And what that does is it's going to pull the information onto the client. It downloads the files onto that folder, so we can take a look at that if you wish, and we'll just pull that up right here under SMARTree, Git repositories, and I had test folders, I believe, and Bayer. So now you see that these files are now in this folder. So you didn't have to download them manually or whatnot. By just putting that link in there, you have access to these folders. Then finally you can start up the client by clicking on this. So what it's doing now is it's digging through all of those files and finding information. Information might be things like smart tags and whatnot, and we'll get into that later. But this is all the information here. All the materials that I just mentioned are all on that site, and now they're all on your computer. So that's basically how you go from getting started to having data, and you can then move on to the next step, which will be creating and editing your first SMARTree. Thank you.